January 15th. This is a special meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power. It is 1:04 and we'll start this meeting. Before I call the meeting to order, I did want to just share important, exciting news that we did prevail on the ERA proceeding up in San Francisco recently, and that was regarding the forecast for rates down here, and the analysis that we put forth, the position that we put forth in terms of how the forecast should be calculated and viewed was the prevailing argument, and how we should calculate in the future is the way that we've put that forth. And so very excited. This is an important decision for our organization. And I just want to thank everybody that was involved in making sure that the PUC saw the light and that this decision came forth. There's so many people to thank from the board of directors that really showed the courage and gave the staff the authorization to do what they needed to do. And staff starting with our CEO, Bill Carnahan, and our COO, Cody, and all of our staff, and Sebastian, that really put together a great strategy, working with all of the stakeholders, from the mayors of our city, newly elected Mayor Todd Gloria, who was instrumental in the city of San Diego, and all of our mayors, and Serge Tadine, who is our mayor on our board as well, of Imperial Beach, everybody who really helped out, the governor's office. So just very thankful for all of the stakeholders that really helped us out. This is an important moment and an important decision. So thank you very much. Bill, I don't know if you wanted to add something later on.
Yes, I'd like to later on, Mr. Chairman.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to call this meeting to order, and let's do a Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the, do we have a flag, Sebastian? All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And let's do, Megan, can we do a roll call?
Yes. San Diego representative?
Here.
Imperial Beach representative?
Present.
La Mesa representative?
Here.
Chula Vista representative? Encinitas representative?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Megan. Do we have any changes to the posted agenda?
Staff doesn't.
All right. Any of my fellow colleagues have any changes to the agenda? Not hearing anybody jump up. Let's go to public comments. Megan, did you receive any requests to speak or have their comments read into the record?
No, we have no public comments at this time.
All right, we will move on to, there is no consent calendar. So we're going to move right to our regular agenda. First item is approval of energy risk management policy update. We have a recommendation, amend section 6.5, delegation of authority per transaction by position title to allow the chief executive officer to make collateral and security deposit payment to CAISO, and adopt the managing congestion risk addendum to the energy risk management policy. It's a lot of stuff, and our CEO will take this item.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to actually pass it off to Ryan here in a minute, but I'd like to say if you took a look at this at all, you'll see it was tens of, I think it was 70 pages altogether, and it's really what we're proposing are some addendums and additions to our risk management plan. And now that we're becoming a real entity and we're talking about real dollars to buy energy and soon to be revenues coming in, we're in an environment with the CAISO and the energy market in California where decisions happen quickly. I mean, it's real time, it's 15-minute intervals, it's very complicated and very dynamic, because you can have loads in the early afternoon that are very hot, so there's a lot of air conditioning, and an hour later the clouds come in and the loads drop, and because the air conditioning goes off, and you have to make those adjustments, and vice versa if it's hotter than normal. These are real-time occurrences, and they many times involve real money. And so we have to try to balance in our operations, and what you allow us to do is to be able to be nimble and make the adjustments as we go along, whether it's in this case, there's two parts. One is the overall, how do we mitigate the risk? And then the second one is how do we respond to the ISO and others who are requiring us to post collateral and things like that in real time. So you all had already adopted a risk management plan, and that's good. And there's a lot of entities out there who have those. So there's a lot of models to look at that have been accepted by the banking community and the legal community, et cetera, in terms of being able to blend the ability to mitigate your risk as well as react in a timely fashion. So in a way, these are really the sort of housekeeping items, but they're complicated and they do require a lot of thought in terms of what we do. And what we're asking today is to modify the energy risk management policy. And in my view, the two areas are to allow us to post fees and collaterals required by the Cal ISO that we really don't have any there's no negotiations. It's here's the number, you want to do this, put the money up. So we have to have the ability to do that. And of course, we would report back any of those actions to the board at the following meeting. And then the second one actually relates to this sort of in the weeds kind of transmission congestion revenues in terms of the entities that, and let me just give you a very brief take on that. If you own transmission, you turn over the operation of the transmission to the California ISO. And those are like toll roads. And at some point, and everybody has rights to access that transmission on an open basis. But there are times that certain paths get overloaded. There's a high demand on those paths, and it can't take all the energy that people want to put on it. So one of the ways that sort of the ISO democratically deals with that is they start raising the price to use that toll road up to a point where you have only those that value it at that level will use it, and the others drop off. Likewise, if you own transmission and they're on a congested path, that is more valuable than a transmission path that is not congested. So the value gets shared with the transmission owner by the Cal ISO. And as a matter of fact, with us in effect having a piece of the SDG&E system, we will have certain rights assigned to us of their transmission system. We don't know a lot of the details about that yet because that's a very, very specific kind of a look, but we will be participating in that market, both as a buyer and a seller. So we needed to modify the risk management plan to accommodate those kinds of actions, again, in real time, delegating a lot of that to the executive director and reporting back later. So that's sort of the Reader's Digest version. I'll turn it over to Ryan to talk in any more detail that he would like to. He could probably go through all 70 some pages if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. So Ryan, what can you do to enlighten them on this subject?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. Ryan Barron, General Counsel. I think Bill did a better presentation than I could have. The item before you, Dave Culp has been negotiating with the independent system operator to get you all registered to schedule and deliver energy over the grid. And that requires a few steps. And the first thing that requires is a $500,000 security deposit for any entity that has less than 6 months of market activity with the CAISO. And that also requires a $50,000 collateral to deal with your daily liabilities. Now, the security deposit is looked at every 6 months and adjusted down as you have more market activity and more experience with the CAISO. The collateral can go up or down depending on your performance. That's also listed in Dave's staff report. If you do have any technical questions, I may defer to Bill or Dave and have you come back to you. But essentially, as part of this registration process, the CAISO has asked that SDCP amend its energy risk management policy to allow the executive officer to make these payments not only the 500,000 and 50,000, but to also participate in the day ahead, real time, and ancillary services markets. And so what that does is, we explain how you're going to buy energy from your generators through power purchase agreements long-term, or through some of the EEI master agreements and WSPPs that we brought to you last time around that we're in the process of negotiating. But to the extent you have more power on a given day, on the day ahead or in real time or less, you'll either buy that or sell that buy it from or sell it into the CAISO market. So as part of this registration process, you're going to be allowed to participate in those three markets, as well as the congestion market that Bill just described. So the congestion revenue rights is outlined in the staff report. There's also a policy before you on how to handle that. It's essentially a financial instrument that allows you to hedge congestion charges. So in addition to the CAISO charging all the load serving entities a certain transmission access charge to access the grid, they also charge congestion charges. So as part of that $500,000, you'll be able to receive, participate in an annual auction for these rights. They're financial instruments, they're a tradable commodity that you can buy and sell. And you want to buy them proportionate to how much congestion you have on a particular transmission line. And those are actually laid out, those lines and different pricing are laid out in the addendum. So the farther you go east, as a general rule of thumb, the more congestion you have, the higher congestion charges. So you want to have your congestion charges equivalent to how much power you're coming over. We don't quite know that yet, as Bill alluded to. We were allocated certain rights from SDG&E, and as we buy power and know where it's coming from, the true smart people that do this on a day-to-day basis will be able to look at that policy and manage that congestion. So the item before you today is essentially not only to make that security deposit and collateral posting, but it would also amend the energy risk management policy to allow the executive director to participate in those day ahead, real time ancillary services markets, which we could not, because it happens as a fluid market, we couldn't bring back to you on a monthly basis. And that is adding a line item to the risk management policy to allow the executive director to execute those contracts. So you'll see that the energy risk management policy breaks it down by product, notional value, term, dollar amount. This is a fluid market. We don't expect $50 million transactions by any means, but there are no limits on those as there are with other energy products. It will simply be the authority of staff to execute contracts, buy power from the CAISO day ahead in the 5 and 15-minute real-time ancillary services, etc. So I hope I got it all done in a nutshell, and hope it wasn't too technical. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. This is some complex stuff, and so thank you for attempting to boil it down for us, and I think you've done a great job. One question for me is, in terms of the collateral, I know that whatever transaction under this policy that you would execute as the CEO, you would report back at the next meeting. But what about the collateral, the terms of any collateral that we would, is that kind of some sort of one-time we work with River City Bank or whomever to acquire the deposit and to acquire collateral? I mean, how do you see that happening? And if it's multiple times, would that also, the terms of that collateral, in terms of whatever, any deal that we're entering into, would that also come with a transaction so the board is able to review that?
Well, let me take a shot at this. It's really a little bit of all of the above because, we're like any, and it's really a fact that we're like any new entity. So we really don't have a track record established in terms of our financial capabilities. So as folks do business with us, whether we're buying power from folks or dealing with the Cal ISO, they want collateral like they would from any business, at least until we get our revenue coming in and we're able to establish some reserve funds and be able to cover those things. So there will be different kinds of transactions that will require it. We of course will try to satisfy them in other ways besides just putting up the cash, although the cash will come back to us eventually. And we take into account when we do the budgeting, at least we think we have sufficient funds to take care of those. That will be relieved a lot, just parenthetically, when we were able to tap the River City loan. That will give us a bigger pool of money, where right now we're basically operating with our startup budget and startup funding. And so we review that all the time, and we have done some of those already. And so we're always working with the finance folks and, our soon to be CFO when that person gets here, to make sure that we've allowed for those, that we can accommodate those, and that we can continue normal business without any hiccups in that area. But we're getting kind of down to the end of the budget year for startup. And so we're watching that even closer right now to make sure we don't have any issues there. But it varies. And of course, I would be coming back and reporting to you at the next board meeting.
Right.
This is done for expediency. And if we could come back to you, we would, but it just,
Right.
the dynamics
Right,
don't allow
right.
that.
And I guess I understand with respect to the transactions, but I just, so in addition to the transaction, you'll also come back to us on any additional responsibility that SDCP has taken on in terms of collateral or deposits.
Yeah. Oh,
All
yes.
right,
Yeah.
perfect,
And
perfect.
in fact, we'll be instituting yet this month probably a monthly financial report. And the report goes to the Risk Management and Finance Committee first, and they take a fairly deep dive, we hope, into what's there. We'll point out any idiosyncrasies that count. Then it will come to you all as a part of your agenda packet. And we intend to have a mid-year budget review very soon, because we're literally in the middle of the budget year. We want to make sure we're okay for the balance of the year. We'll get a glimpse of that even today when you look at the pro formas, because they're really a lot of those numbers are the same in the budget. So yeah, we're keeping a very close eye on all of that to make sure, and we'll report back to you all anything that is noteworthy or of concern or even good news. And I have that today.
All right, and then just one last question in terms of the congestion pricing or the congestion risk. Are we going to be purchasing some sort of? I'm not sure if I absolutely understand this, Ryan, but are we going to be purchasing some whatever you call this risk, this congestion risk credit, if you will, before we understand what we're getting from SDG&E, because they have generation that may have been purchased for the benefit of our ratepayers?
Yeah, you're being allocated certain rights from SDG&E. I don't have that number here in front of me. Dave was handling that.
Yeah, I don't think we have the total number either.
All right.
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 And
We're not going to go out and
Or-
purchase. We're not going to go out and purchase before we know what we already get from them.
That's correct.
Correct. And then you can participate in an annual auction to receive more allocations, and as well as there's monthly auctions as well.
How do we view that when we look at, because like not that long ago, we had responses to our RFO, our first RFO for resource adequacy. And we saw some responses that were maybe kind of Central Valley, California. We saw some out in Imperial Valley. We saw some wind out in New Mexico. How are we basically factoring in this kind of congestion risk? Because some of that pricing coming out of New Mexico was certainly cheaper than we saw in other areas, and so but that may be more at risk for congestion. So how do we analyze that, and are we analyzing that so that we're not basically, so that we're looking at the total cost?
Well, let me take a shot at that. Yes, we do analyze the total cost, and any carriage charges or penalties or any additional costs that are likely to occur on the path. We take that into account before we even make the deal. I mean, that's one of the things we look at in terms of value pricing. But the way the ISO works, it is that Most of the paths, I would say the vast majority of the paths are not congested. So you put it in, you can put it in at Northern California, take it out in San Diego, and the charges for transportation are the same. They're not dictated by distance or anything like that. It's only when a particular important path starts to get overloaded, the demand is greater than it can accommodate, that you trigger the congestion revenues come into play as a way of sort of democratically or equally giving folks the opportunity to value that path to them and bid a price saying, for this price, I want it. If it's higher, I don't. So it's not the ISO actually allocating it based upon any other things than what people are willing to pay. Now, those sometimes are harder and they're kind of sporadic. They're not overloaded all the time. They might be overloaded if a transmission line goes out somewhere, or they might be overloaded because of a heat wave. And so those we just try to do the best we can. And of course the industry, is pretty open, and we know where those are and they know where those are. And so we try to factor all of that in as a part of our risk management strategy, both in terms of value to us and in terms of it being there when we need it and that sort of thing. So without going into the 70 some pages of how we actually do that, that's kind of the thumbnail sketch of how it happens.
Yeah,
And it's really no different than anybody else, quite frankly. We're not unique in everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is good. And I think it actually almost like confirms my viewpoint, which is I think we should be moving as quickly as possible to bring online local generation, more distributive generation, more generation in our local communities, so that we're not generating way out in areas where the users and our customers aren't living. So anyways.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I think in a way, when you look at the local resource adequacy, that's really what that's all about, because that is supposed to be kind of in your backyard generation that doesn't really rely on a lot of transmission to get to your loads. And that's very site specific by location to location. And unfortunately in the San Diego area, as we well know, RA is difficult to find sometimes because of that. So that would tell you that there may in fact be a need for more local resources of the right type, of course, to solve the resource adequacy issue.
All right. Any questions or comments for our staff members? Megan, did we have any public comment on this item?
We had no public comments.
All right. So any further thoughts on this item? Or I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I'll move it. Alameza moves it. Bill
All
Baker.
right.
Chair, I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and we have a second. Welcome, Vice Chair Padilla. I now see you.
Everyone, sorry for being tardy. Great to see
Oh.
you, even briefly.
No worries. Thank you for being here.
Director Montgomery, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
I'm sorry, wait, are we voting? The audio seems bad for me.
Yes.
Item number 1, the risk management delegation
yes.
authority.
So we had a motion by Director Baber and a second by Director Step Montgomery. And the motion was to approve the staff's recommendation.
I'm sorry, I thought you guys called me.
We did for the vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes,
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
Great. Let's move on to the second item, which is the approval of the 2021 rates, the all-important item. Recommendation is to approve the rates contained in attachment A to be effective as of March 1st, 2021. And I will turn this over to Bill. Are you taking this, or is PA?
John and I are gonna tag team here. So
All yours.
if we could have the first slide, what we're going to go through is sort of the process that we will be undertaking and why. And then John will talk about the rates themselves, the derivation of the rates, the pro forma that part of the nuts and bolts, and then I'll come back in and talk about what happens after this in terms of what we intend to do. So if we could have the first slide. Well, this is really the key considerations and the process that we have gone through and are presenting to you today. And the first step in that is to determine the cost. What is it, like any business, what does it cost to do business? And in as much detail and with as much accuracy as you can make, with perhaps a little bit of conservancy, because you don't really want to be short. But I can tell you in this pro forma, there really isn't very much contingency, but nonetheless, we have to make sure we have revenues to meet the demands. And so we first have to determine how much money do we need. The second one then is we have to then adopt rates that are sufficient to generate those revenues. In other words, we have to have enough money to pay the bills. Then timing, and the reason we're doing it at this particular time, and these are our initial rates, the first ones we'll ever have, is because we need the rates in place certainly by the time we provide service. But actually, there is a process where once we begin service, we have to notify the customers 2 times before we start service, 60 days apart, and two notices after we start, informing them what we did. And so in order to meet a March rollout, we have to do the first notices in January. And we have a time schedule here that we're going to show you. So that's why we're bringing it to you today. And that's why we're bringing it really as a special meeting, so that we can not wait another 2 or 3 weeks for a meeting. We can get a head start on the process of the notifications. And that, of course, is underway in terms of development and all the things associated with that. So that's why we're doing it now. And then once we finish, even though we don't set rates based on what the competition is doing, we look around because our customers are going to want to know. And we look around and try to give our customers an idea of how our rates compare, not only with SDG&E, but even you'll see in here, we actually compare estimated at this point what we think other CCAs are doing. You know, how competitive are we within our own category of service? So that's what we're going to share with you today. And when we get finished, we'll be asking you to adopt 2 rates: the base rate, which is 50% renewables and 5% greenhouse gas free. That's our base rate, and then a rate we're calling Power 100, which is 100% renewables. And John will be able to tell you what both of those look like. I will tell you, we pattern our rates after SDG&E. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. So the breakdown of the categories, and when you see the number of rates that are offered, you know, I'm always amazed when I look at that to think that you know, those are all rate classifications with customers in it paying that rate, and they're paying it because it's different than some other rates. And so you normally think maybe you have residential, commercial, industrial, but within those there's a ton of breakdown. And in order for us to be able to do it in a timely fashion and be able to do comparisons later on, we tried to mirror their rate classification, but the values are different. So with that, I'll turn it over to John, who will take you through the next few slides, and then I'll come back in to wrap it up. So John.
All right, thank you. That was a great introduction, Bill. Thanks for the setup there. I'm John DeLesio with Pacific Energy Advisors, and so I'm going to walk through sort of the mechanics of the rate design, the proposed rates. We'll really start off with estimates of costs, your operating costs. Obviously, a fundamental requirement of rates is that they recover your costs. So we use a very detailed pro forma model to project out what the cost will be associated with operating the program with the portfolio that's been specified. That would be the 50% renewable, 5% hydro, and then the voluntary 100% renewable option. So this is just a summary of the pro forma modeling. We're going to focus on fiscal year 2022 as the basis for rate setting, and The reason for that is the current fiscal year 2021, most of that's half of that is gone, and we're only going to be serving customers for a portion of that. So it's not really a full equivalent year. So 2022, starting in July, that will be the first fiscal year we're actually bringing in revenues and serving customers for the duration of it. So the basic categories of costs, power supply, of course, is the biggest one. But there are other operating costs that we model out related to the cost of operating the program, staffing and consulting costs, billing fees, and whatnot. You've also got your debt service associated with your loans from River City Bank, and then ultimately we need to set a rate that covers those costs and a little bit more, so that you have some contribution to reserves. So if we could go to the next slide, this is really
John, before we move from that slide, I was just wondering what are the assumptions in terms of line item for power supply? I understand the assumption, early on, but then as we go out to 2024 and 2025, what are you calculating that revenue need off of? Is that still 50%, 55% renewable energy?
No, we actually have that stepping up over time. So it starts off at 50%, and then it's on a trajectory. I believe it's by 2030 to get to 100. I'd have to double check, but it's on an upward trajectory.
Bill, could we get at some point, I've asked for this before, could we get, I'd like to have a conversation about how we're stepping up to, I know IB and Encinitas have the 2030 100%, and San Diego, Chula Vista, I think, are at 2035, and so is La Mesa within their cap. Could we get so either have a discussion on this or some sort of proposal in terms of what the trajectory is to get to 100% for 2030 and 2035?
Sure.
Just because I also want to see that consistently within some of the assumptions that we're making as well.
Sure, we can do that. And that's important. And I would just say parenthetically here, I'm going to be talking to you later on and posing the idea that we should have a strategic planning session probably in April. And that would give us a chance to review what our policy is with regard to the ramp in and that sort of thing. So
Excellent.
So it's time.
Thank you.
So we can go to the next slide, please. So here again, we're focusing on fiscal year 2022 is what they call the test year for rate setting purposes. And this is an aggregation of the information in the prior slide, a little bit more high level, but again, you've got the power supply expense. We're estimating about $243.8 million for the year. All the other operating expenses at about $13.8 million, debt service at 3.6, and then the reserve contribution is, that's to a degree is discretionary. What we have used for the basis of the proposed rates is really what we consider to be the minimum reserve contribution that would, at least on a pro forma basis, comply with certain covenants that are in your River City Bank loan. So you've got certain commitments that have been made in that loan agreement that you'll have cumulative reserve levels by quarter. And so the overall reserve contribution, which is about 5% of your annual revenues that are in the proposed rates, those would be consistent with those covenants. Now, you could elect to target a higher reserve level, but of course that would have to be considered in the context of higher rates, right? So on an overall system average basis, then the system average rate would be about 7.9 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's simply the total revenues divided by the total sales. Customers don't actually pay that average rate; they're going to pay one of many different rate schedules, but on average, this would be the average revenue that would be obtained during the fiscal year. Go to the next one, please. So then breaking that down on the bar chart here on the left shows, that 7.9 cent average rate. 7 cents of it is power cost. We'll break that down a little bit in a second. And then your other operating expenses are about 0.4 cents. your debt service is about 0.1 cents per kilowatt hour, and then your reserve contribution is about 0.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So you've got to get a sense of, of the components of your overall cost of service here. And then in terms of that 7 cent per kilowatt hour of power cost, the chart on the right here shows how that's broken out. And the cost of energy, this would be just brown power, more or less. We've broken your renewable cost between the premium associated with the renewable energy versus the underlying value of the brown energy. So just basic energy is about 4.1 cents. And then you can see the other categories. Congestion, that was discussed in the prior item. There is congestion in the coming into the San Diego area. And historically, that's about 0.3 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's the assumption that's been embedded in the rate design. And then we've broken out the voluntary green energy that is over and above the state mandated renewable portfolio standard. So that would be the what's labeled voluntary renewable energy, and then the carbon-free energy. So if you look at those as that's the extra cost of having the greener portfolio relative to the minimally compliant RPS. So that adds about together 0.3 cents per kilowatt hour to your average rate. Not a huge cost relative to everything else. More or less, the other elements of the power supply costs, I would say, are non-discretionary. These may vary when we actually go out to buy the power, but it's market-based costs. So whatever we're able to contract for, that's what's going to drive these numbers. So that's what we're looking at there. We can go to the next slide. So this is timing, and Bill, I think, alluded to this or covered it. But it's important to adopt the initial rates today so that this can align with both the customer notification process and also give your billing services provider, Calpine, an opportunity to actually incorporate the rates into their billing system. So basically, the Calpine would be implementing those rates in their system over the next couple of weeks. First customer notices would go out next week. So we're right up against it. And then a few weeks later, the second customer notices would go out, and these would be for phase one customers, obviously. And then service would commence for those phase one customers on March 1st. In terms of the rate design itself, so I talked about the system average rate. But the actual rate design is, we've used the same structure as SDG&E rates. And this is an approach that's been used successfully by pretty much all the other CCA programs that have come before you. So basically, we're mirroring the rate book of the incumbent utility here. So we'll have dozens of different rate schedules in the same types of charges. So we'll have time of use charges where there are time of use charges on their side, energy and demand charges, et cetera. Big advantage of this is that it enables comparability. So a customer can really know, what the relative cost is for SDCP versus what they're used to from the utility. And also, since we do rely on SDG&E to actually bill the customers, using their similar rate structure ensures compatibility with their billing process. The rate design itself, it's scaled. So the charges, the SDG&E charges are scaled so that they will result in recovery of SDCP's revenue requirement. And that would be for the base product. And then for the 100% renewable energy product, the Power 100, there is an incremental cost. There would be a premium of 0.75 cents per kilowatt hour. That is equivalent to the incremental cost of moving from the 50% renewable, 5% hydro the cost of supplying that product to 100% renewable energy product. We estimate that at 0.75 cents, and that is the proposed premium to customers participating in that rate option. In terms of how SDCP rates will compare to SDG&E in March, we really don't know for sure because we know there are upcoming changes to SDG&E's generation rates, and the PCIA just got the error decision yesterday, and there's also a rate filing that SDG&E made in December related to under collections in last year in 2020. So we're waiting on the final rates from SDG&E to be able to make precise comparisons, and we intend to do that as soon as those rates are made available. In terms of what we are confident in, we are confident that rate to rate, so SDCP's rate versus SDG&E's generation rate, SDCP will clearly be lower on a total bill basis because of the PCIA, the addition of that charge. We can't say yet, definitively whether the total cost will be a little bit lower or a little bit higher. So we just need to wait and see what when SDG&E provides those updated numbers, and then we'll come back and brief the board on that.
Like mentioned, that we're going to come back once we know what they're filing on.
And
Okay.
we should know within, they're likely to come out with some adjusted rates as of March.
Well, they will file by then. They may not have them approved, but at least we'll have a better idea.
All right. And then, John, when we're talking about 0.75 cent per kilowatt for the Power 100, what is what would you say is the bill impact going from Power On to Power 100?
So yeah, that's I'd say it's about, on a total bill basis, it's about a 3% increase to go to the Power 100. And the way I get there is the 0.75 cents is roughly 10% higher than the base rate, that SDCP's base rate. But of course, that's only part of the bill, right? That's just the generation part. And then on a total bill basis, it's probably 3 to 4% more than the Power On rate.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that.
Well, please don't, because
Okay.
I'm talking about total rates. That again gets to what the charges are going to be that we haven't seen yet from SDG&E. So those are
right.
estimates.
All right.
Okay, I'd like to, before we close, just make a couple of points with regard to rate comparisons. And I guess it is a little difficult, even once we know the San Diego rates, to really truly compare rates because the character, the composition of the energy that's served under our base rate and their comparable base rate are not the same. And you can see from the chart here, they publish in their power content label every year, and this was the last one in 2019, that the renewable portion of their energy that's delivered is 31% renewable. And you can see we're planning that our energy is going to be 50% renewable plus 5% greenhouse gas free. Now, those are not comparable products. If you're, it may be 2 or 3 more years before their base product gets to 50%. We're going to be above that because, as John says, we're ramping up. So ours is a much cleaner product and is decidedly better for the environment for sure. So that makes it a little difficult. It's like comparing a Ford and a Chevy or something like that. They're cars, but they're not exactly the same. So I just point that out as we go forward. Okay, the next slide. Also, the other thing we wanted to look at is how do our rates, which are based on our costs, not anybody else's rates, but how do those compare on a comparable basis at a residential rate level with some of the other CCAs in California? And I think what you can see here is that I think there's like 12 of them on here, something like that. We're the fourth or fifth lowest. So we certainly are in the upper tier of folks who have lower rates than others. And one of the things I found interesting here, and just as an aside, is that if you notice what I think is the oldest CCA in California, MCE, that's Marin, ends up having the highest. And I think that's partly to do with some of their goals and the things they're doing program wise and whatnot. But certainly we can hold our own when it comes to being competitive within the CCA community. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that's, I think the last one is just the recommendation, which is to adopt the rates with the understanding that in a way, these are not only initial rates, but perhaps tentative interim rates until we get more information. And the goal is to get that before we provide service, and then come back to you all and give you a more detailed report on some of the issues that came up late, like the comparisons.
All right. Any questions? Thank you, staff. Any questions for John or for Bill? All right. John, we talked about the rate design, and I think that it makes a lot of sense that we mirror SDG&E's rates at this point, rate design. But I know that we did talk about before that we're going to kind of dig into this. I'm not saying that I want to dig into all of the tariffs and all of this stuff, but I do think that we are different organizations, and we need to look at this rate design and make sure that it matches our values in our perspective. And so I do think that at some point we ought to be thinking about what we want to look at and how we want it to represent, our communities and our values. And so hopefully we're kind of methodically thinking about how we're going to dig into this into the future. I know that right now during launch, it makes the most amount of sense to mirror what they have, but down the line, I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of make sure, look at them and make sure that they represent exactly what we want them to be, and the types of decisions that we want to make for our communities. Also, the reserve policy. So it sounds like we're at 5%, and that's kind of that's really about the covenant on the River City Bank loan. Are we going to, Bill? Are we going to have that discussion? I guess you said we may have a strategic planning session in March or April. Are we going to discuss a proper reserve policy? Because I know that in our pro forma, we talked about larger reserves so that we could start saving up for projects that we wanted to commence in our region. So are we going to talk about beyond just the legal obligation of 5%?
Yes, and the reserve levels, once you get above the minimum required, which is the approach that we've taken in the pro forma, is really a policy decision. And it can be used for programs. It could be used to increase reserve levels so you become credit worthy, you have better credit ratings so that ultimately you can get a credit rating and have bond issues. Some CCAs have done that set targets, for those kinds of things. And that truly is a policy decision that we would have in a strategic planning session.
Good, because I really look forward to that discussion, because I think that we've really talked about an aggressive agenda. And so I want to make sure that we're starting to line up our policies in a way that represents what we want to do. Anyways, I think Vice Chair Padilla had a question or a comment.
It wasn't a question, just a comment, in that, definitely, given the regulatory scheme on an interim basis, I mean, this is very straightforward and I think fairly conservative and appropriate, for us to move forward with in terms of the schedule.
Is that a motion, Vice Chair Padilla?
If you need it, it can be, Mr. Chairman, whenever
All right.
my colleagues are done.
All right, we have a motion. Director Baber has his hand up, so I'll recognize Director Baber.
I'll support the motion, but I want to ask Bill a question, if that's okay.
That's
Can
good.
you hear me?
Yeah.
So Bill, you and I talked about with the municipal rollout that we would visit the different big customers in the La Mesa area that would qualify as municipal, which is beyond just the city. And they'll respect you because you're a great CEO, and they're going to look at you and go, so Bill, walk me through this. How much is this going to cost us? And I know the answer is it depends. But do you want to role play with me so I understand this? How are you going to answer that question with municipal employees with all these things in flux?
Well, first of all, it is an important question. I mean, it in some people's mind will be the differentiating point about whether they opt out or not, and we know that, and it's very important to us, and we'll take a great deal of pride when we're below. I mean, we'll certainly talk about that fact, but currently, we can talk about being cost competitive, whatever that means. And I think as we get closer, we will, within the next 2 or 3 weeks or so, we keep trying to define what does this era mean. I've actually commenced some discussions with SDG&E to see if we can get some early warning about what their rates might look like, so that we can actually do that computation as early as we can in terms of what we think those impacts might be. We might be able to, we could come up with a range. And I was thinking about, well, maybe we could do that. I don't know that will satisfy people, but it might be the best we can do in the interim here. I think we're going to, well, I can tell you one thing for certain, that the ERA decision that just came down put us in a lot better competitive position by a long shot, and up to including the continuing possibility and the higher likelihood that we may in fact be lower. Okay, now I can't guarantee that at this point, but I feel a lot more optimistic about us being very near or comparable rates, equal rates, or lower. Now I can't, again, I hate to almost say that because I don't want to have people tell me I promised it, but I'm feeling a lot better than I felt a couple of days ago, because there would have been no way we could have done it if the ERA had not gone our way. So that is a huge victory for us. So
that works. I get that. The second question they would ask, and I should know this, so forgive me. So I'm representing one of the governmental entities we're going to be talking to. When do I have to make a decision? When, if I do nothing, these rates apply to me? What is my point to opt out? Tell me the timeline I'm on,
okay, well, it's been a while since I've been through this,
or if Ryan or whoever else knows.
I think actually it's a continuum. You can opt in and opt out really at any time. The notices go out before and after, because people will probably be making those that are going to make a decision will probably be making those decisions early on. But they can opt out, and there is no and you can opt out, and later on you can opt back in. I think the board actually has to do some work to set some policies in that regard. I'll have to check that. Maybe Ryan knows that, but there's not a time limit on which they have to make the decision. Even after they've gotten their first bills, they can still make that decision.
Yeah, if I may, they have the right to opt out when you start noticing them. I think 2 before enrollment, 2 after. Opt out within 60 days at no charge. After that, the board may establish a fee. Once they do opt out, they have to stay with the IOU for a year before they return to CCA service.
If I may interject, and that's correct, Ryan. This policy that we're referencing is the CCA terms and conditions. This is something that was brought to you all in November or December, I believe. And our customers may opt out whenever they like, and as a collective, there won't be a charge placed on them. Some other CCAs have had the custom to place a charge on opt-out. We chose not to. But that is correct. For customers who do decide to opt out and then want to come back in, SDG&E asks for 1 year to do that.
But we don't want any opting in or opting out and then opting in and opting out. We want you to stay with us. And so, The good thing, Bill Baber, is, and I say your last name, Bill, and then Baber, just because there's another.
I understand.
All right. The bill number one, you're bill number one, Mr. Baber.
Okay.
since you've been here earlier. But anyways, that I think the good thing here too is that we're going to be in our launch. We're launching our municipal accounts first, and there are not so many of them. And we, SDCP, will individualize our outreach to each of the municipalities and quasi government accounts so that we're working with them and so that they have a better understanding. Of course, it's probably hard to do that with all of the residential customers because there are a lot of them, but we will have much more definitiveness in terms of the rates once we're looking at residential customers, because they're not going to be launched until the the beginning of 2022. And so we'll be good by then. And it sounds like our rates are going to be very, very competitive with the IOU. So
yeah, yes, thank you for clarifying that. Bill and I have talked about setting up the meetings with the potential municipal customer.
Right.
And they're going to make a business decision what's best for their organization. And Bill and I have talked about, we're going to go in there and make the pitch. And we're also going to pitch the social value of joining us. It's not purely economic, but economics are a big part of it. So, Joe, it's getting real. We're actually going to start talking to customers soon.
Well, I am making the assumption that our cities are likely to want to go with us regardless.
The cities are probably the easiest potential customer. It's the other ones, I think. Bill and I have talked, but there's a certain business protocol. I don't want these folks, the first time they hear about us, is they get something in the mail. We need to make the personal outreach to these. These are big customers.
Right. And then we have
numbers.
And then
the
Bill,
numbers are manageable for the smaller systems, and with San Diego, we can ask them to help us identify their biggest, or we can identify them, but which ones they think we ought to go talk to. And we try to do a reach out to let them know who we are and the typical kind of answering questions and that sort of thing. So
right. And then and then civilian reports up to Cody. And so they and all of the government relations persons that Cody will have, all those folks will be making sure that the messaging is done and it's done on time and properly so that all of our customers are getting notice. And if we can reach them individual because they're a city or a quasi government account or CNI account, then we should, especially if they're a large CNI account, we should be touching them. Obviously the residential ones will have to rely on civilian in terms of whatever ability to get out.
The job description for our next round of hires, and there is a key accounts person in that batch. So within a month, we should have someone on board to give one-on-one treatment. So we're starting to staff up in that area as well.
Good. Director Montgomery Stepp had her hand up, so I'm going to recognize her.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to first express my support for this item. It is very exciting, and as Director Baber said, this is where it gets real. So I'm excited about this moving forward. I do just have some process questions just to make sure that I'm clear on what has been stated. I believe that it has been stated, but I want to be clear. And then a couple of comments after that. So with these adopting of the initial rates, they are as is expressed in our packet and have not yet considered the outcomes of the initial error hearing decision.
That is correct.
Okay. And so when we are noticing folks, when we begin our notice, we will, with this phase one, those rates will not change based on this group of potential customers.
I don't know if I understood the question, but what we're announcing in the mailings that go out, we're not giving an exact, well, the rates will be there, but what we're doing is we're saying those rates are competitive. We're not doing a rate comparison. And then we are committing to relook at that before they actually receive service. So we're notifying those rates might change, for the better. We're planning. So yeah, we'll word that in such a way that they understand what the lay of the land really is.
Okay, yes, you answered my question. I just want to make sure we're not, that these are more noticing requirements as opposed to being stuck.
Yeah, we don't want to think there's a bait and switch, certainly unless the switch is an advantage of theirs, then they love it. So what we're saying is we don't really know. We think we're going to like the answer, and as soon as we find out, we will let you know and make whatever changes are necessary or that we can.
We have the mailer ready to go. It's going to the printer already, so we could send that out to everybody and even post it on our website.
Yeah, you want to see it? Yeah, sure.
What it says is cleaner power at competitive prices, and then all the other values that we offer, and then it directs folks to our website for more information. And the website is where things can be more dynamic.
But I think the confusion comes in, and I'm fine with the confusion now, but the confusion is that what we're saying is that this is the rate for 55% renewable energy, and this is the rate for 100%. But what does that mean? So if I'm paying $150 a month to SDG&E, what does that mean to me? And really, like for right now, that's stay tuned kind of answer, because we don't absolutely know what that comparison is going to be. But what we're saying is this is our rate, this is our revenue requirement at this point. But then in terms of all the other transportation costs and all that other stuff that SDG&E will levy on there, we don't know what their rates are going to be, and so we have a hard time understanding what the comparison would be at this point.
Correct.
Yeah, no, definitely understood. Just looking at it from the customer perspective, and how we're going to communicate that, because we know that these different decisions fluctuate our costs, and definitely something we now understand. But from the ratepayers' perspective, just want to try to check in on how we're communicating that. So that was my main question about process. I appreciate the answers. I just want to note also, just as we move forward in this conversation and we get through our different phases, that we continue to be innovative when it comes to our low to moderate income scenario products. Just in case we experience those fluctuations, that we continue to center that. I have mentioned in the past that SoCal Edison does not charge PCIA fees on the low income customers. I know this is something we would have to be in discussions with SDG&E, but in all the rate conversations, I just want to keep that out there. But I'm definitely supportive of this. And if you need a second to the motion, I'm happy to second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Monica, I would say also in terms of the low income programs, I think that when Bill had mentioned that strategic planning and the revenue reserves, the reserves for our budget, we should be talking about that. We should be talking because, depending on, the decisions that we're making in terms of the reserve policy, all of this kind of is interconnected. And so we definitely want to be talking about how we can target and help some of our customers that need our support.
Absolutely.
And so, Cody, the other question is too, that so we have this kind of technical kind of noticing that we're going to do, but then I would imagine that you and Civilian at some point are going to go even further than that, because most of our customers, the only ones that are going to be getting this right now are the municipal customers and the quasi-government accounts. Everybody else is not getting this kind of legal notice. But in the future, not only will have a key account person that will reach out to them, but we're going to work through Civilian to make sure that we're sending out information to them that they could actually understand. It's not just legal jargon, but it's actual English and concise and relevant to them.
Yes, and we'll share our mailers with you, and the website is actually launching. The new revision is launching on Tuesday. All of that, we're working with Civilian to have a full court press on marketing and communications and outreach to the broader community to make sure they understand what we're doing when we're launching, generate some excitement around it and communicate in plain English and Spanish and Tagalog around what this program is and how they can be involved. And it's pretty exciting. We're working on also a nice event style, whatever that is, COVID friendly these days, at our launch, just to draw some attention and celebrate that. So it has everything from social media to paid media and all of the above.
And one of the things we haven't mentioned with regard to cooperation and education is that Sebastian has been working with some of your staff from your cities, and we expect to fold them in so that they become real partners in all of this and helping us identify what you all might need, how we can work. They can become local spokespersons in terms of answering questions as well. So we're gonna rely on them to become educated and help us do what's best for each of your communities. So you'll have and they can actually help you answer questions and things like that real time. So we're going to leverage them as well.
Director Montgomery Stepp, I think you still have a list you're checking off, but I wanted to clarify one thing. If it wasn't clear earlier, the discount rates that apply to customers, whether they're low income or medical discounts or whatnot, those discounts still apply to our customers. So they'll still be receiving those as well, just in case that wasn't clear.
Okay, thank you.
Director Baber, did you have a further question or a comment?
No, I'm good. Is my hand still up? Sorry.
Oh, no
I'm
problem.
good.
No problem. All right, if there are no more questions or comments, Megan, did we have any public comments on this item?
We have no public comments.
All right, so we have a motion by, I believe, Vice Chair Padilla and seconded by Director Montgomery Stepp, and so we can go to vote.
Director Montgomery, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, so we've come to the end of our agenda, and now we have an opportunity for director comments. Any of my fellow directors want to make any comments? All right, any reports by our general counsel?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any, what about our CEO?
Yeah, I have a 2 or 3 things I'd like to report on, if you'd allow me.
Sure, absolutely.
I'd like to report that we have 2 new hires to announce. One is already on board. Laura Fernandez is our legislative and regulatory director. She started this week, I think, Monday. And so she is an attorney and was with the law firm of Braun, Blazing, Smith and Wynn. They do an awful lot of public power work. They do a lot of work for CCAs as well. So she's very conversant, knows the players, has done work before the CPUC and the Energy Commission and FERC and CARB and the Cal ISO. So she's well-rounded in terms of operating in those circles, and we're very, very glad to have her. And so she is on board, and hopefully when you bump into her, which is in a literal sense not likely very soon, but at least say hello to her and welcome her aboard. We're glad to have her. We also are announcing that we have the Power Services manager accepted our offer. He'll be to work on February the 8th. And he comes in a background from being with an entity that a lot of us have in the power business have done business with, called the Energy Authority, TEA. They've done lots of different things, and he did the power resource portfolio work for them. Prior to that, he was with MCE, Marin Clean Energy, where he was the contract set and management and settlement head for that CCA. So he comes with a background in CCAs as well. And as I say, he'll be starting on the 8th. The next one's out of the box that we are on the street for right now is CFO. We're also looking, as I said earlier, for an accounts services manager, I think is our title for sort of a key accounts manager. A director of data customer care, that's the person that interfaces with SDG&E and Calpine on the receiving end, the billing and receiving end. We need to get someone there to interface at that point. Then we're going to follow that by a finance manager to actually help in the finance area. Once we start getting revenues, we're going to have quite a demand there, and we've been we've been relying on others to provide that service. We need to staff up for that. And also an energy contracts manager so that we can begin to manage all these contracts. So we have those that we're announcing, those that we're out for, and those that are in the queue. So we're starting to staff up, and I think I believe, and of course we have Cody and Sebastian. I think we are getting the core of an excellent team that can get us where we need, and I'm very happy that we're able to attract those kind of folks. Mike wanted to announce that we received the CPUC RA waiver, local waiver from the CPUC. They actually commented that we did everything we possibly could do. They had, actually some nice things to say about that. I will mention that there were about 11 other CCAs that also had to get waivers, so we weren't alone in that category. And one IOU, PG&E, also had to get waivers. So we were in a not so select group. We'd rather not have been there at all, but I think we discussed that when it happened. But they did grant that to us. The good side of that is through the efforts of some of the PEA folks and others, we actually sold some surplus RA for the balance of the month of January, because we bought the RA. We don't have any customers yet, so rather than sit there and not be able to move it, they were able to move those for the balance of the month, and actually are going to embark on trying to do that with other surpluses that we have in that area. And while we didn't make any money, I can tell you that the gross receipts on that transaction are about $800,000. So it's fairly significant in terms of reducing our exposure. So we're happy about that. We've commenced discussions on several fronts with SDG&E. We are having a meeting next week at the CEO level, plus the chair and vice chair. We're going to meet with Carolyn Wynn and key members of her staff to talk about areas where we can work together. I think the ERA, the way it came about, where it really could have, in my view, could have been avoided, because we went to them, talked to them about what we thought was wrong, and it was a fairly simple error in my view. They indicated that the CPUC made them do it, if you will, and my concern was they could have gone with us together to this CPUC and asked to have that rectified, which they didn't. They apologized for that, and so now we're going to meet on a regular basis at the CEO levels and high level staff to work on issues. We have already started. As you know, one of the things we aren't certain about are the rates and what they're proposing for rates. So I talked to one of their AGMs who's in charge of rates, and we are sending 2 or 3 of our folks over to sit down with his rate folks, and they are willing to share with us what they anticipate the rates might be and what all that's looking like, so that we not only get a heads up, perhaps ahead of the filing, but if we have particular issues about any of their designs, that will give us an opportunity to sit down and talk about it. So we're excited about that prospect of being able to perhaps work collectively on those issues. And we had a phone call this morning with SDG&E staff about getting the agreements and documents in place for us to begin to start talking seriously with them on a bilateral basis about buying some energy from them, which we weren't able to do in the first go around. So we're now have a timetable, and we are getting staffs together and exchanging information. And so perhaps we'll be able to open some avenues there where we can help build our portfolio with resources that we need and resources that would make a lot of sense for us to be able to buy it from them. So I'm excited about the opportunities we have to perhaps build a meaningful working relationship with them, and we're devoting some effort to that. I guess the only other thing is that I also would like to echo the good work of the staff and the board support in the ERA filings. I'm going to actually turn it over to Cody to talk about the team, and it really was a team effort, and I wanted to turn it over to her, but I wanted to make sure she got the kudos that she deserves because she brought some unique people to bear on the situation and meaningful people. And so I think, everybody contributed to that effort, and it was truly a monumental decision. You all should be very proud of the staff and the consultants that we have assembled here, because they were successful in a big ticket item. So Cody, you want to talk about the folks who were on the team?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Bill, and definitely the first round of thanks goes to the board for kind of giving us the support and trust in doing what we needed to do and move quickly. As we do appreciate that, and it's a big threat to our launch and to us as an organization, and we're very happy that it was successful. I think some of the players. Obviously, Ty Tosdell's on the line, and he's our regulatory counsel and our point person, all these things, and the choreographer of all of our moves. So he deserves a lot of credit. And this was an incredibly, it's a team sport for sure, incredibly technical, legal, but also took a lot of advocacy and political strategy as well. And we pulled all of those skills together. So beyond Ty and his team, we also had a second legal firm on board called Keys and Fox, who had better access to data because of some rules around data access, and they were fantastic. Jake and Lily and his team, really deep diving in legal issues and helping us advocate both in meetings with the commission, writing really detailed and smart legal briefs on this issue. And then we had a technical firm called NewGen, so Brian Dickman and Natalie Accardo and that team, deep diving into the numbers and digging so far into these technical papers to understand the equations that are used and where are they following the trail of numbers to help us evaluate and calculate possible rate outcomes. And then our advocates themselves, folks on the Community Advisory Committee and others that really wanted to help and called into the commission meeting when they were discussing this. And, I think that was very valuable to show the commission that the San Diego region is paying attention and customers are demanding competition and choice, and for them to start hearing from us. If you ever listen to one of those meetings, it's all very Bay Area focused advocates calling in there. So it was good for the commission to hear that we're here and we're paying attention. Cal CCA is the statewide CCA association, and they were very helpful and influential as well, and we appreciate their help. And our member cities, the staff were paying attention, and our electeds as well. And Mayor Gloria from the city of San Diego was also incredibly helpful in making a few phone calls and helping us get this on the radar of other electeds. So I know it's a long list of, Grammy thank yous, but this is a big effort, and I think it's a good reminder to show, in order to protect our position in the market and our customer retention and just our launch in general, this is what it takes, and our team pulled it off. So we're very happy with it. It's just one step of many. It's not letting us go to our heads. But I think it's good to see that this is how it has to play out, and we pulled together a good team to do it. So thank you.
Yeah. I just want to repeat what I said at the beginning, which is that the board is very appreciative of everything that you guys have done. This was a very large threat against our organization. We're talking about rates today and being competitive. And we wouldn't be able to say that if this decision didn't go our way. We wouldn't be able to say that we would be competitive at launch, which is a very, very detrimental thing to not be able to say. So I am very, very happy and very excited with the news today, and with all the reports that are coming out, and very thankful to all of our stakeholders, everybody that went to bat because they believe in what we're doing. And so very grateful for that. And I also wanted to just say thank you to both you, Bill, Cody, you and Bill, for all the work that you guys are doing to build this team. This team is coming together, and I'm very happy with the strength of the team and the folks that we're bringing on board. They are top-notch folks. And so Laura Fernandez, thank you for accepting, and thank you for being a part of the team. I look forward to seeing you and meeting you one day, maybe just virtually right now, but in person at another point. and also look forward to our director of procurement or resource resource person when they come on board as well. These are important positions in our organization. The last thing I want to say is that with the bold leadership that we're seeing from the County of San Diego, I do want to make sure that we're not missing a beat and taking advantage of this opportunity to reach out to leadership of County of San Diego and let them know, of our successes so far, and that we stand ready to help them if they want to pursue a community choice energy program, whether they are exploring one for themselves or want to join another CCE. We definitely want to be helpful to them because we believe in this, and we believe that the more folks that are part of our community choice energy program or any community choice energy program, and then are on that pathway of 100% renewable energy, the better off we are as a state and a country. So if you want to, I've already talked to, sent an email to Nathan and Tara Lawson Reamer. So, but if you guys want to reach out or just kind of let them know that we're ready to help out if they need any help. All right. All right, so that is it. Unless anybody else has anything to say, we are adjourned, and our next meeting is January 28th. That's our regular meeting for the month of January. All right, guys.
All right.
Have an
Bye-bye.
awesome weekend. Thank you.
Good weekend.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Joe.
Thank you.